This video will help you learn how to use longitude and latitude to find the intersection of specific coordinates on a map. Before I show you a few sample problems, we will review how to read a map. First, let's look at the compass rose. The compass rose shows the four major directions: north, east, south, and west. You probably have a fun acronym to help you remember the order of the compass rose, such as never eat shredded wheat or never eat soggy waffles. Remembering the order of the compass rose will help you as you work with longitude and latitude lines. Let's look at the world map. This is the same world map that is found in your history textbook on page A2 to A3. I printed out a copy so that I could write on it to help demonstrate this concept. First, I'm going to trace the equator. The equator runs horizontally and splits the world into two hemispheres. A northern hemisphere on top, remember those cardinal directions, and a southern hemisphere on the bottom. The equator is a line of latitude. All lines of latitude are measured north or above the equator, or south or below the equator. Lines of latitude run parallel or in the same direction as the equator. Lines of latitude will never cross the equator. I have labeled the lines of latitude so that you can see them easier on this map. We have 15 degrees north or above the equator, 30 degrees north of the equator, 45 degrees north of the equator, 60 degrees north of the equator, and 75 degrees north of the equator. Below the equator, we have the same lines. They are just lines of latitude that are south of the equator. 15 degrees south, 30 degrees south, 45 degrees south, 60 degrees south, and 75 degrees south. You can see that these lines run all the way across the map and are parallel to the equator. Lines of latitude and longitude are labeled in your history book and almost every map you look at. Typically, they are labeled on the left and right-hand sides of the map, just like I have shown. If you are asked to find the line of 45 degrees north, the label of the line north tells you that it is a line above the equator in the northern hemisphere. First, you find the equator that I have drawn in red. Then you look at the labels of the lines, each line north of the equator: 15, 30, 45 degrees north. This is the line of 45 degrees north latitude. Runs all the way across the map. If you are asked to find the line of 30 degrees south, the label of the line tells you that it would be in the southern hemisphere, or below the equator. First, we need to find the equator and look at the labels of the lines of latitude. We're looking for 30 degrees south. Here's 30 degrees. It is south of the equator and runs parallel to the equator. Notice it never intersects or crosses the equator. Now we are going to look at lines of longitude. Just like there's the equator as the major line of latitude, the major line of longitude is called the prime meridian. The prime meridian runs vertically and it splits the Earth into two hemispheres: an eastern hemisphere on the right side of this map and a western hemisphere on the left side of this map. Remember those cardinal directions. The prime meridian is a line of longitude. All lines of longitude are measured east to the right or west to the left of the prime meridian. Lines of longitude will never intersect with or cross the prime meridian. I have labeled the lines of longitude on this map so that you can see them a bit easier. They are all labeled in your history book and almost every map you look at. Typically, they are labeled on the bottom edge and top edge of the map. If you were asked to find the line of 105 degrees east, the label of the line tells you that it would be in the eastern hemisphere, or east of the prime meridian. First, you need to find the prime meridian, and then look at the labels on each of the lines east of the prime meridian. On this map, they are labeled every 15 degrees. If we look at the line of 105 degrees east, we can see that it runs parallel to the prime meridian. It's curved on this map to show that the Earth is not a flat object. It runs all the way up and meets up at the top with 105 degrees east. Remember, lines of longitude always run parallel to the prime meridian. They will never intersect or cross it. If you were asked to find the line of 150 degrees west, the label of the line tells you it would be in the western hemisphere, or west of the prime meridian. Find the prime meridian and look at the labels of the lines west of the prime meridian. We are looking for 150 degrees. This is 150 degrees west because it is west of the prime meridian and runs parallel to the prime meridian. It will never intersect with or cross the prime meridian. Now that we know the basics of reading longitude and latitude lines on a map, let's practice finding the intersection of some longitude and latitude lines. The first problem says, what country is at the intersection of 15 degrees south and 45 degrees west? Using the cardinal directions of south and west listed in the question, we can narrow down the region where the answer is located. We know it should be in the southern hemisphere, or south of the equator, and in the western hemisphere, or west of the prime meridian. Let's look at that on the map. Using the cardinal directions of south and west listed in the question, we can narrow down the region where the answer is located. We know it is in the southern hemisphere, or south of the equator, and also in the western hemisphere, or west of the prime meridian. It should be in this region of the map. Let's find the first line that was listed in the question, 15 degrees south. The label of the line as south reminds us that the line is south of the equator, and it runs parallel to the equator. Here is the equator. South of the equator, 15 degrees. This line of latitude is a line that we will be using to answer the question. Let's keep one finger on that line, 15 degrees south. Then we find the second line listed, 45 degrees west. The label of the line as west reminds us that the line is west of the prime meridian and runs parallel to the prime meridian. If we look at the prime meridian and look at the lines west of it, we are looking for 45 degrees. This is the second line we will be using to answer this question. Now that I have one finger from each hand on those lines, I can trace along those lines until I find where they intersect. Now you can see that the intersection of those lines, 15 degrees south and 45 degrees west, is in the country of Brazil. The next problem says, what capital city is near the intersection of 30 degrees north and 30 degrees east? Using the cardinal directions of north and east listed in the question, we can narrow down the region where the answer is located. We know it is in the northern hemisphere, or north of the equator, and in the eastern hemisphere, or east of the prime meridian. Let's look at it on a map. Using the cardinal directions of north and east listed in the question, we can narrow down the region where the answer is located. We know it is in the northern hemisphere, or north of the equator. We also know it is in the eastern hemisphere, or east of the prime meridian. It should be in this region of the map. Then we can find the first line listed, 30 degrees north. The label of the line as north reminds us that the line is north of the equator and runs parallel to the equator. I'm going to leave one finger on the label of that line, 30 degrees north, right here, to remind me that that's the line I'll be using to help answer this question, 30 degrees north. Then we find the second line listed, 30 degrees east. The label of the line as east reminds us that the line is east of the prime meridian, and it runs parallel to the prime meridian. If we look at the labels of the lines, 15 degrees east, 30 degrees east. This is the other line I will be using to help answer this question. We trace along those lines to figure out that this is the intersection of those lines. It's difficult to see what the answer is on this map. So using the history book, I'm going to look at this region of the world a little bit closer up. This is the continent of Africa. We'll turn to that page in the history book. Here's the map of Africa on page A16 of the history textbook. You can see this one's a lot easier to read. First, I need to find the line of 30 degrees north, north of the equator. Here's 10 degrees, 20 degrees, 30 degrees north. This is the line I'll be using. Then I need to find the other line of 30 degrees east. First, I need to find the prime meridian. The prime meridian is also known as 0 degrees. I need to go east of the prime meridian, 10, 20, 30 degrees. Here's the other line. I need to trace it up to where it intersects with 30 degrees north. If I look, there's the intersection of those lines. What capital city is near the intersection of 30 degrees north and 30 degrees east? On the map, that intersection is in the country of Egypt, and it is near two different cities, Cairo, labeled with a star, and Alexandria, labeled with a square dot. Looking down at the map key on this page shows that the star means a national capital, and the box means a city with over 1 million people in population. This means that the answer to my question, the capital city at that intersection, is the city of Cairo, Egypt. It is the capital of Egypt and right near the intersection of 30 degrees north and 30 degrees east. Two quick reminders before the end of this video. First, remember your cardinal directions from the compass rose: north, east, south, west. This will help you immensely. Second, remember that longitude is measured east and west of the prime meridian and runs parallel to the prime meridian, and latitude is measured north and south of the equator and runs parallel to the equator. Hope this helps you out.